My guest is Wafa Sultan. She is the author of the book A God Who Hates. You may have seen some of the publicity generated by Ms. Sultan when she appeared on Al Jazeera. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Thank you very much for being with us on the show.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Is hatred of women both pervasive in Muslim culture and, in your view, in the Islamic faith itself?
Yes, it is deeply rooted in the Islamic teachings.
Is it more deeply rooted in practice and in theory than, say, the Christian church's long history of betraying and ignoring and disenfranchising women also?
You know, the problem in Islam is with the life of Muhammad, the prophet of Islam. If you go back and read the life of Muhammad and the way he treated women in his life, you will better understand the reason behind women abuse in the Islamic world.
Could you just give my listeners, I've read the book, but could you give them some idea of the stories, the tales, the history that you're talking about with the Prophet himself?
Yeah, he married his second wife, Aisha, when she was 6. He was over 50.
6.
Yes. His third wife was a Jewish woman. He killed her father, her brother, and her husband. In the very same night, he slept with her. He married his son's wife. After he fell in love with her, he forced his son to leave her for him because he said, Allah ordered me to marry her. And in Islam, Muhammad has to be the role model for every Muslim man on earth.
Do you believe that in the historical accuracy of the stories that you've just told? I mean, there is, of course, tremendous question in regard to the foundation of almost every major religion in the world about how much is accurately being reported. So do you think that these three...
I believe it is not important to know if they're accurate or not. The more important thing, it is written in our history books. And the impact of these stories, you know, I can feel the impact of this story in our daily lives. So if it is accurate or not, the problem, it is written, and people believe it.
Absolutely. Well, now let me ask you about your own, when you grew up in Syria. Something happened at the university when you were in medical school in 1979, a profound experience. Can you tell us how that links to your rejection, not just of bad cultural experience on the part of Muslim men, but a fundamental sense that the God of Islam has got serious problems?
Yeah, before my eyes, the Muslim Brotherhood showered my professor with bullets while they were shouting, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. It means Allah is great. And, you know, it was a very major turning point of my life because at that moment, I started to question what kind of God that we worship.
At that time, were you thinking, I've got to rethink this God, replace this God with a different concept? Or was this pretty much when you said, look, the rejection of this God completely is the only sensible way for me to go?
Absolutely, absolutely, because I believe, you know, we eventually become the God we worship. So in order for me to recreate a new mentality in the Islamic world, I have to recreate a new God.
But in a sense, the new God is no God.
You know, if it is no God or if it is a loving God, doesn't matter for me. Mm-hmm. We have to refine something else to fill the God, the emptiness that God will, you know, Allah will leave behind if we take him out of our culture.
I have talked to other women about this subject, people I'm sure you know, but who did not live in the Middle East. They did not live in Syria as you did. But their reflection would be that there is a way to transform Islam or to emphasize other pieces of the overall scriptural message to create a useful and I think some would say a loving Islam for the 21st century. But you would reject that.
I don't believe they can do that, but let's give them a chance if they claim they can do that. I hope one day they will prove me wrong.
Right now, it looks like...
Because it is easy for someone who lives in the West to claim he can, find a good form of Islam.
Right now, it looks...
For people who came from the Islamic world and lived under Islamic Sharia, the issue seems to be much harder, if not impossible.
I think it's fair to say, and use some of these words yourself, that Islam is dangerous, it's worthless, and I guess the question is, what exactly do you think Muslims ought to do? Right now, it looks to me, as a Western observer, that Islam is actually doing fine, and sadly, it looks like the most radical forms of Islam are actually working to some degree. It's turned the United States into a virtual national security state itself. We are afraid as Americans of everything. It almost looks like whatever you think or I think, it's doing fine, even in its most radical forms. Am I wrong?
Yeah, if you don't face evil, of course evil will do fine. Because the Western government and people in the West refuse to admit where the problem is.
Do you think that all of those Islamic organizations in this country that promote the idea that there's a radical fringe to their religion like there is to so many other religions? I mean, we have Christians who shoot doctors because they don't like the medical procedures they perform. I mean, we have those examples, but there is a whole group, almost a cottage industry of people in this country who say, no, Islam, if taken and understood fully, is just fine. You would say those people are scamming us. They're lying to us.
It is not in their interest to tell you the truth about their religion. They live here and they don't want to be discriminated against, and I understand that. And some of them, if not the majority of them, practice the concept of al-taqiyya. I don't know if you have ever heard
No,
of
what is that?
al-taqiyya.
What is that?
It is an Islamic concept that allow Muslims to cheat, to lie, to cover their feeling in order to reach their agenda, their goal.
Uh-huh. This is, by the way, there are movements, American-based religious movements that have something very comparable to that says, look, the goal, if you know the truth about everything, and you have to mislead people or cheat them, that's okay. I mean, I've heard that from other groups, but I was not aware of this construct. And you think that's really what's going on with these American-based groups here?
Absolutely. I have no doubt about it because, for the first 10 years of my life here in America, I was very much involved with my Muslim community, and I have heard it a million times that they were here to spread Islam and eventually to replace the American Constitution with Islamic Sharia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the underlying foundation of Islam is to take over the world.
Well, and on that note, not pleasant note, let me take a break. When we come back, more with Wafa Sultan. She is the author of the very provocative, to say the least, book, A God Who Hates. When we come back, we're going to look at some of what happens literally every day to women in the Islamic world, and then we'll try to figure out if there's any solution. We'll be back on Culture Shocks. All right, we're back right here on Culture Shocks. I'm Barry Lynn. If you listen to this show a lot, you know that one of the concerns we talk about regularly are women's rights around the world, not just here in the United States, and that we frequently talk about the reprehensible misconduct by many in power in the Middle East who, based on their own religious beliefs, in fact, treat women in the most reprehensible manner possible.